Hello friends, fellow modelers, and hobby enthusiasts. Welcome to the first episode and the introduction to my Mansions of Madness speed painting series, where I'll be painting every miniature from the Lovecraftian horror exploration board game, Mansions of Madness. I painted these with the goal of increasing immersion for board game nights with friends and family. I just couldn't bring myself to leave these gray. That being said, there are numerous minis in this game. The amount of painting is roughly equivalent to painting a small Warhammer army. In counting, I have 24 monsters, also known as the enemy characters, including duplicates and uniques, 8 unique investigators, aka the player characters. So for simplicity, I'll group the duplicates in one video for each type of enemy and character. The goal of this series will be to show how to get nice looking minis on a table with few simple steps. Let's call it a little more than tabletop ready standard. I hope to show an approachable and fun way anyone can get decent results. Most of the techniques I'll be going over in this series are pretty standard if you've ever tried painting any kind of minis, so you'll be able to carry over any of the concepts here universally. Regardless of skill level, hopefully you'll have something to take away. If this is your first time viewing my channel, welcome. So, with introductions out of the way, let's push some pigment on some minis. Let's start with the largest sculpts first in this episode, the 2 Star Spawn. These come pre-glued to a square base that have little info cards that slot into some pre-cut holes. To make handling easier, I'll paint the minis separately from the base and glue them on later. They seem to be made from a softer plastic and are a little more flexible than what you would find on, let's say, Warhammer kits on a sprue, so it is easy enough to separate the base with a sharp knife. Once removed, I attach them via double-sided tape to little glass jars that I can handle comfortably in my hand for the next steps. I have 2 different paint schemes in mind for each Star Spawn, so let's start with the first one. Starting with a primer, I sprayed Badger Stynylrez Res Black thinned with UMP acrylic thinner through my airbrush. Making sure to get good coverage across the model. The mixture is about 50-50 paint and thinner. I then followed with a few mist coats of Tamiya X2 White and sprayed this over the black from the above, front, and back. I'm not looking for complete coverage with this layer, I want the white to be a little transparent. Focusing my spraying on the more visible areas ensures I have a rough outline of the bright and dark areas established. This also aids in helping me see details on the miniature. Areas where white didn't hit as much creates almost a gray color between the white and black, a soft gradient. These steps give me a good base coat to help inform where I want to place my highlights and shadows with the next brush painting steps. With now fully dried base coats established, I made an all-over green filter wash. I did a roughly 50-50 mix of Vallejo Game Ink Black Green and Vallejo Airbrush Flow Improver on my well palette, and slapped this over the entirety of the mini. Adding Flow Improver helps slow the drying time of the wash a little bit and gives me a little more time to manipulate the wash, so as not to create staining on undesirable spots. Once I had acceptable coverage, I let that sit till fully dry. Next step was a series of dry brushing. The wash stained some areas a bit too dark for my taste, so to restore some brightness, I did an all-over dry brush with Citadel Warpstone Glow, using cheap eyeshadow brushes and a Lego plate as my texture palette. To add some more brightness and highlights to the skin, I did another round of dry brushing with mood green on areas where I pictured light to be hitting the most. Followed by a more selective dry brushing with Ushabti bone on the brightest points. With all those initial highlights established, now it was time to bring in some definition to the shadows and recesses. To achieve this, I did an all-over wash with a 50-50 mix of Mullein Oil and Agrax Earthshade to create a dark brown. This will tint all the greens slightly darker, but this will establish some darker recesses and shadows as well. So the green skin's looking pretty good, but of course there's things I can do to help push the paint job a little further. Now with my wet palette, I begin layering in some highlights with progressively lighter greens. Returning with Warpstone Glow, I decided first to clean up some of the larger areas. This step is just to bring back some of the brightness that was toned down by the wash. I also returned with Moot Green to highlight some of the smaller details and raise areas of the green skin, particularly around the face and areas of the wings. Followed by a little bit of Scarsnick green in certain areas to pick out the very bright points on the tentacles, face, wings, and some of the veins on the muscle areas. At this stage, I also added a bright base coat for the eyes, blocking them in with Ushabti bone. To finish off highlights, I did a mix of Ushabti bone and Scarsnick green, and just dotted the brightest points. With the highlights now done, I finished off the skin by adding a glaze of Tesseract Glow over all the brightest points to add a bright filter. The brighter points of the green get a slight yellowish green tint to them and add another dimension to the green skin. I also applied this over the veiny muscle areas to help them stand out a little more. With that step, all the green skin is finished. Now turning my attention to the eyes, I added a glaze of Cassandora yellow over the off-white. Once fully dried, I then added a small dot of Doomfire Magenta to the recesses for the pupils. And then more thin down layers to add a little bit of a pink tint to the corners of the eyes. I'm hunting for all the little canker sores now. With that step done, as well as any other touch-ups, this green variant of the scary tentacle monster is complete. I still need to work on the base, but I'll do those afterwards, and shifted my focus onto painting the other star spawn. The prep and priming steps were exactly the same as the previous, but this time, instead of a green color scheme, I opted for a more dark purple variant. So, after layering down the black primer and highlighting with the white through the airbrush again, I mixed a purple wash with a mix of Aethermatic Blue, Doomfire Magenta, and Black Templar. To bring down the intensity, I mixed in a bit of contrast medium as well, and then applied this over the entire star spawn. After letting that layer dry, I did an all-over dry brush with Citadel Xarius Purple, followed by Slaanesh Gray to bring out some of the raised edges and highlights. To shade the recesses and tint the model darker, I applied an all-over wash with Drakenhof Nightshade. To break up some of the purple also, I brushed on Aethermatic Blue over the muscles, wings, spine, and various areas of the skin to add some variation. On the eyes, I base coated them with Pallid Witch Flesh, followed by an all-over wash with Doomfire Magenta to finish them. Following this, added a few highlights to the face tentacles with Slaanesh Gray. I then returned to Doomfire Magenta and painted this on over all the open wounds, sores, and ends of the tentacles. I also glazed this along the spine and the back. To finish, I did an all-over dry brushing on the purple areas with Slaanesh Gray just to add a really quick edge highlight on some of the raised areas closer to the light source. With that step, the second star spawn is finished, so with the two star spawns painted, I can now focus on the bases. I thought about getting new bases for these, but I decided to stay with the default square bases. They allowed little info cards for each enemy type to slide in, so in an effort to preserve that feature, I'll have to work with them. I decided to work on one at a time. So, for the green star spawns base, I started by covering the base with a medium consistency CA glue, also making sure to fill in the holes from the removed pegs. Over the glue, I poured on some fine gravel texture and let that to completely dry. I then painted a coat of Vallejo model color beige brown mixed with a bit of Mod Podge matte and distilled water. I made sure to also wipe the edges clean with paper towels. After letting that fully cure, I scraped off some of the rough edges with a hobby knife and fixed the green star spawn into place with extra thin superglue and accelerator.
Find the perfect position and right there.
To incorporate the mini into the base and also add some quick definition, I did an all-over wash with Nuln Oil. After letting that dry, I did an all-over brush with Vallejo Beige Brown to bring back some of the highlights. I wanted to also add some green, so to create the illusion of some patches of grass, I dry brushed some warpstone glow in some of the areas, and also kind of creates like a mossy texture. And to create some more variety, I added a few tufts of white flowers from Gamer's Grass. They come with adhesive on them, but I added super glue for good measure. Then finally, I painted the rim and the inner outline of the base with a matte and black to leave a neat and clean appearance. Creating the base for the purple star spawn was similar, but I added a few different touches. After adding the glue and gravel, spots of cat litter was added to add some different sized granules. I then coated that with a mixture of Dawnstone, Mod Podge matte, distilled water, and a few drops of Nuln Oil. The gray paint and Mod Podge acts as a base layer and seals everything in nicely before painting. I glued the purple star spawn in place, and added some more cat litter around the hands and feet with the super glue. I then covered the base with an all-over wash with Nuln Oil. After drying, I gave the base a quick all-over dry brushing once again, but this time with Screaming Skull to highlight all the raised edges. The edges of the base were then painted with a matte and black as usual. The purple star spawn is now finished as well. This method is kind of like my usual go-to for creating simple flat bases. If you don't usually jazz up your bases, this is kind of a good place to start, and you can always add more things like tufts and rocks to your personal taste. If you watched the video up to this point, thank you. This concludes episode 1 of the Mansions of Madness speed painting series. Hopefully you've taken away something useful, and maybe are inspired to spruce up minis for your own wargamer RPG sessions. If you enjoyed the video, please give us a like and subscribe. Stay safe, be nice to each other, build stuff, paint stuff. I'll see you in the next episode. Here's the Star Spawn.
Do you see the resemblance?